You have a right to own the firearms of your choice. That right shall not be infringed. It's not about hunting. It's not about target practice. It's not even about rape or home defense. It is about an armed public being necessary to keep people free. An unarmed public is a tyrant's playground. The other thing you have to do besides educate yourself is you have to know who's on your side, who can defend you. I urge you to join the NRA. Please join the NRA. Also, get to know your sheriff. They are elected. They're not hired like policemen. I don't have a problem with policemen. I never have. But the sheriffs are different. They work for you. They're elected. And the job they are sworn to do is to solemnly support the Constitution of the United States of America. And thankfully, unlike the politicians, not all of them are violating their oath and trampling the Constitution in the process, just for the sake of votes. In fact, the sheriffs of this country are quite different than that. Many of them are putting it all on the line because they are doing what they were elected to do. We're going to talk to four of, I think, the bravest sheriffs in all of America. They represent 484 other sheriffs who are also as brave. They have banded together for our Second Amendment rights. They will not sit down. They will not be silenced. Not only must we listen to our sheriffs, get to know them, but then, if they're on the side of the Constitution, we must do everything in our power to support these sheriffs. We must stand with them and fight right alongside them, and vow to do everything in our power to make sure that we are not the generation that let freedom slip through our fingertips. They are doing their part. Let me introduce you to the four gentlemen you'll be meeting here in a second. First one comes from Milwaukee, Sheriff David Clark. He isn't exactly the most conservative, or he isn't in the most conservative city in America. It doesn't help him to win votes in this city to stand in the way of a far-left agenda. Even though Clark is a Democrat, he has served 24 years with the Milwaukee Police Department. He's been at his post for a decade. But that hasn't stopped the smears after he suggested law-abiding citizens take personal responsibility with their own safety. Think of that. You're being smeared because you say you have to have personal responsibility and just consider owning a firearm. You remember this?
I'm Sheriff David Clark, and I want to talk to you about something personal, your safety. It's no longer a spectator sport. I need you in the game. But are you ready? With officers laid off and furloughed, simply calling 911 and waiting is no longer your best option. You can beg for mercy from a violent criminal, hide under the bed, or you can fight back. But are you prepared? Consider taking a certified safety course in handling a firearm so you can defend yourself until we get there. You have a duty to protect yourself and your family. We're partners now. Can I count on you?
How is that offensive? He's been under constant attack ever since, but he stood his ground. Then we have Sheriff Tim Mueller. He's been the sheriff of Lynn County, Oregon since 2005. He's a highly decorated sheriff with numerous public safety awards, a volunteer firefighter, and he has put himself on the line when he posted a letter that he wrote to Vice President Biden that passionately announced he will not be enforcing unconstitutional gun control laws. He said, and I quote, "We are all Americans. We must not allow, nor shall we tolerate, the actions of criminals, no matter how heinous the crimes, to prompt politicians to enact laws that will infringe upon the liberties of responsible citizens who have broken no laws." The left has responded with accusations that it is the sheriff now who is the lawbreaker. He, too, has refused to buckle despite intense media pressure and despite the looming confrontation with the federal government. Then, next is Sheriff Glenn Palmer. He is the sheriff in Grant County, Oregon, since 2001. He's taken a similar stand, an Air Force vet who takes his oath of protection of the people and the Constitution extremely seriously. He also wrote to Vice President Joe Biden stating, "I will not tolerate, nor will I permit any federal incursion within the exterior boundaries of Grant County, Oregon, where any type of gun control legislation aimed at disarming law-abiding citizens is the goal or objective." And finally, Sheriff Steve Cox, Livingston County, Missouri. Missouri's been in the news a lot. He's been a sheriff there since 2001. Extremely bright, graduated first in his class at the academy, former Missouri Sheriff of the Year, and he has decided to actually live out the oath and defend the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. He wrote to President Barack Obama stating any attempt to restrict the Second Amendment rights through executive order is, in my opinion, unconstitutional and tantamount to an all-out assault on the United States Constitution. Let me have you meet these sheriffs who represent so many more around our country. How you doing, guys?
Great. Good afternoon.
Let me start. Well, let me start here, and let's go around the table. Why are you making a stand on this? Because that kind of language kind of sounds like we're headed towards an impasse as a nation.
Glenn, what I want to say is that we, as a nation, are facing some very difficult times right now. Our Constitution is very near and dear to me, and I believe that it's under attack, and it's still a living document, and it's still, as police officers, we still have to abide by the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States empowers the people. It does not empower the federal government. It prohibits them, it restricts them, and it prevents them from walking on top of the citizens that have elected me to office.
Okay. Sheriff?
Glenn, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I think you hit the nail right on the head in your opening there. You know, this is really about freedom and it's about liberty. Government doesn't get to say, I heard Joe Biden and I think the gentleman from New York talk about what people should do. We don't get to say how people can and should defend themselves. I trust law-abiding citizens, I always have. And government has to begin to learn to let go and start trusting citizens. I believe that personal security, personal safety is an individual responsibility. The citizens in Wisconsin, and I can only speak for what's going on in Wisconsin, they've been empowered in the last couple of years. The legislature passed the Personal Protection Act, which allows people to apply and obtain a permit to go armed with a concealed weapon. And they also passed Castle Doctrine, which now flips the equation and allows a homeowner, in the event of an intruder, to use force up to and including deadly force to defend themselves and their family. And they don't have to explain before. They had to show that their actions were reasonable. Now the bad guy has to explain what he's doing in somebody else's house, something, you know, a location that's very sacred. And so, you know, with everything going on, I wanted to leverage those things and operationalize Castle Doctrine and the Personal Protection Act and remind people, because I believe in giving people choices, as my ad does. And like I said, if they want to hide under the bed, fine. I don't really care what people do, but it's not for me to say. And my job is just to give people some things to think about ahead of time, because when I like to use this phrase, when the wolf's at the door, it's a little too late to, you know, try to get your act together.
Do you believe the Constitution's under attack?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And, you know, the Constitution means a lot to me, not just because of the oath that I took. And you know, as a black man, you know, our freedom came a little later than the Founding Fathers did, but it came nonetheless. And it came at a heavy price. And I'm not going to cede 1 ounce of my freedom and my liberty, or yours, or your family's, back to the government, whether it be the federal government or the state government or to anybody else. And so I'm going to defend this thing tooth and nail.
Steve?
Thank you. I think I told your staff before, where does it start and where does it stop? If Washington's going to take away part of the Second Amendment, what's next? Is it the 1st, 4th, 14th? Where does it end? As law enforcement and as elected officials, we have an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and, for me, the state of Missouri. You know, what I'm seeing and hearing in the media nowadays scares the heck out of me. If we just do nothing, if we stand by and, you know, somebody will take care of it, the people we elect in Washington will set it aside or correct it or whatever, that's wrong. I've always been one person that not to attract attention to myself, but I think we have to put our foot down whenever we see something that's wrong. We have to make a stand. Sometimes if you lead, you may stand alone.
And?
Well, sometimes you do kind of feel like you're alone. You know, but, you know, I'm sitting here with 3 other sheriffs, and when it comes to defending that Constitution, and because we're all sworn not to only support the Constitution of the United States, but also our own states, but when it's under attack like it is, if not us, then who is going to defend it? And it looks like
this will put you guys in jeopardy, because you have many police officers. You have the police chief in Los Angeles. You have them all over saying really pretty much the opposite of what you're saying. You know, a lot of them are saying you don't have a right. You just don't have a right to have it. We can, you know, the police can go and grab your guns. If the president signs an executive order, they can do that. So then what happens? What do you guys do? President signs an executive order. What is that? What do you do?
Where's the due process? Let me say this, and I don't have problems with municipal agencies, state agencies, or anything else, but a long time ago there was a guy wanting to kill himself in our county, and I took the call and dealt with it. I went up speaking with him on the cell phone, found out where he was at, and he, at first, you know, I told him who I was. He's like, I don't know if I want to talk to you. I'm like, why not? He said, because I don't trust the cops. And I said, I don't either. That's why I'm a sheriff. And you know, he laughed, and I knew if he was going to laugh, he wasn't probably intent on killing himself. So we talked, and even to this day, he'll make his way up to come and talk to me and thank me for taking that time. But guns don't kill people. It's the people that do that. No different than driving a car, using a blunt object, whatever it is.
But you notice how they've framed this thing, and you talked about it. They realize, when I say they, those anti-gun people, those anti-Second Amendment people on the left, they know that the phrase gun control doesn't play well in this country, because it is a fundamental freedom. I've had people tell me over the last 2 or 3 weeks since my ad came out, which was meant to just be a local ad, I was talking to my constituents, they said, I don't even own guns, but I get what you're saying. And they see that as a slippery slope. For even people who don't own guns, they understand this is not just about guns. And as my colleague over here said, because I view the Second Amendment as sacred as the First. I really do. I think they go hand in hand, and I think he mentioned as well the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, these protections, but they've shifted this language from gun control to reducing gun violence, and that's not what this is about. Okay, because the weapons that they're talking about are not the weapons of choice, at least in my county, for the thugs on the street or committing this mayhem on a daily basis. They're not buying their ammo over the internet. They're not using large capacity magazines. They're not using these so-called assault rifles, and they're not concerned about background checks. So you can see, and I've seen right through it, and I think most people have, you can see right through what they're trying to do here. But I think it's a slippery slope. I think it's dangerous. And I was elected, and our state constitution says the sheriff is accountable to the sovereign, the voters of the county. I am not accountable to Washington, D.C. I am not accountable to the White House. I'm not even accountable to Madison, Wisconsin, which is where our capital and the state legislature is. I'm accountable to the people of Milwaukee County. They'll make a determination as to what should happen.
I have to take a quick break, but I have heard from several people that they believe the sheriffs in the country really are the only ones standing in the way of, you know, a tyrant, no matter who, at what time or when in the country's history. But the sheriffs are the only ones that are really kind of out of the system and answer directly to the people and to the Constitution, where everybody else is kind of in this system. Would you agree with that?
Well, we're the only elected law enforcement officers in the country.
Right.
Last voice people have.
Even with some of the publication that the federal government puts out, in their own words, they say that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and they shouldn't be doing anything within the counties without first touching bases with their sheriff.
Okay, back in a minute.